Okay. Before we start to actually move, just stand in for a moment and really take time to simply stand and consider our posture. It's a good way of just centering yourself. And obviously it's a good thing to do from the point of view of becoming a bit more aware of your posture. And through that, beginning to make very gentle, subtle changes to your posture. So the main thing to think about initially is that we want to try and find a way of standing that is supported, in line with the pull of gravity. Center of gravity dropping down just a little bit. So being very careful of your knees. Don't overdo this, but just letting your hips drop back, your knees soften as though you're perched on the edge of the table. This helps to lower your center of gravity, gives you greater stability. And just gradually settling in, noting where there might be tension or stiffness in your body. And bringing your attention to the center of your body, the area between your hips and your waist, and deliberately beginning to move in that area. When we move there, we affect the whole of the body. So one of the features of the postures that we take is that it opens up the possibility for what we might think of as a sense of connection in the body, that feet are connected to shoulders, hands are connected to hips, and so on and so forth. As we release stiffness, tightness in the body, those connections will grow. And as the center part of the body, this area between hips and waist, is the actual physical center, described as being like the hub of a wheel, and all the spokes of a wheel end up in the hub and then radiate out from there. And in the same way, when we start to move in the center of the body, eventually the whole body responds in one way or another. And we can feel that response very clearly going up through the body from hips to say ribs, from ribs to shoulders, from shoulders down into our arms. You may well also notice the slight changes in how your weight is distributed between your feet, the alignment of your knees. Ideally, we try and keep very still in the legs and weight, but because the center of the body will move them, that means that there is adjustment that takes place. That's something that builds up over a period of time in Tai Chi practice, and particularly for people who are fairly new to this, but also right at the start of a session for all of us, really, it's enough to think in terms of there's an intention for that movement to be neutralized. And with the focus on our attention, particularly into the center of the body, the growing awareness of what's happening elsewhere, so our intentions become more significant. Tai Chi and Qigong have been labeled as intentional movement. I think that's a useful thing to keep in our minds, that we're not just trying to sort of let our thoughts drift away on some cloud. We're trying to maintain a sense of attention and intention in the movements that we're actually doing right here and now. That intention is something that becomes more sophisticated with time as we get to know the movements better. And we find that our bodies get to be quite good at following intention. So this is a mind-body process. And in many ways, we will get more out of the practice of these arts if we think of them as moving meditations rather than simply exercise. You'll be getting plenty of exercise, so that's not in question. But it's that mind-body element that I think really takes us forwards in Tai Chi. We may use different images, different ideas of structure, but ultimately we want to try and get to a point where the overlap between mind and body into this area of intention doesn't require any kind of intermediary. And particularly people with a little bit more experience, you'll get odd glimpses of that, where there's an immediate response between body and mind, rather than one in which there's an image that then produces the response, for instance. But that's not to say that the images aren't useful and important. So our experience of these exercises changes over time. And one of the key things, of course, in Tai Chi is repetition. Repetition of individual exercises, but also repetition of sets of movements that we become familiar with. And the latter is when I think we really begin to appreciate this overlap of mind and body. See if you can just allow your body to settle. A nice steady rhythm can build. And this is another way that we can begin to experience a sense of connection in the body, as what happens in, say, our hips resonates with what happens in our shoulders, for instance. These are just examples. You may find those connections, those resonances in all sorts of ways. And part of our attention is simply observational, observing what is going on in the body at any given time. Noting where there may be areas that feel blocked or tight, areas that feel as though they're moving more smoothly. Beginning perhaps to identify areas that may benefit from gentle change, but any change in posture should be done slowly and carefully, but with respect for the body, not forcing the body into a shape that it's not comfortable with. Turning your hands palm out, raise them up a little bit to shoulder height, letting your hips drop back, soften your knees, a bit more open across the upper part of your body with this one. As always, most of what we will do will be done slowly, but it's always a good idea to do some faster movements to prepare for the slower movements, to raise the body temperature a little bit, to get the blood flowing through various muscles. Maybe just increase the tempo of our breathing, getting more oxygen into our system, including our brain, so increasing that sense of alertness. And let your hands drop down. Put one foot forwards. Keep the width of your step. Take a wider stance to give maximum support to our hips and our shoulders. Now just gently letting your weight move from one leg to another. Not too much, don't overextend your knees, and just letting your body turn whichever way is most comfortable for it. Again, trying to build a nice steady rhythm. This time, a lot of emphasis on what's happening in the movement of our weight from one foot to another. So feet, legs, center of the body, these are primary focuses for our attention always in Tai Chi. These are good morning practices to help us to wake up and prepare for the day, as well as being useful exercises in preparation for the Tai Chi session. They're very good in their own right. Then on the other side, and give you a shake. Come back to the parallel posture. So feet below your hips, a little bit, you can play around with that a little bit, but don't have your feet too close together because you'll start to wobble around. Feet are pointing straight forwards or very slightly turned out. And emphasize the very slightly, don't let them spell out like that if you can possibly avoid it. I come a little bit closer. If I exaggerate this, your weight should go somewhat forwards in your feet. Nothing like this much. You can see now I'm leaning forwards, and there's always going to be a slight tendency for that to happen. And we neutralize that. We allow that to change, not by straining in our shoulders and pulling back, but by just allowing the hips drop back again as though you're sitting on the edge of a table. And that brings the pelvis to the level. Put my hands here, you can see how they change angle as I do that, and brings me back to the upright position, but keeps the weight of the body forward. This is the basic posture that contains the qualities that we're going to try and cultivate through the rest of the meeting. The body is supported by your legs, of course. Your upper body is supported by your back, the belly, solar plexus, and chest hanging slightly from the back. And as you lose tightness and stiffness, particularly in back and shoulders, an increasing sense of being supported from within, from the skeleton and the surrounding area. So less need for tightness, stiffness in the upper part of the body to maintain the shape or structure. And then letting your hips drop back a little bit more and pushing up. From the side, you see, it's like sitting on the table, like the table's got lower, and then I feel myself being pushed up. And every now and then, when you do get that sense of dropping, you may find that feeling of the center of gravity dropping a little bit further. This is rooting down. And then your body, like a plant, grows out of the roots, extending and contracting. And extending, feeling the movement going up the spine into your ribs and contracting. This time, bringing your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and the upward expansion pushes your elbows out. Your hands come up, and then as though you're pressing the ball down into it. So this is rooting down the exercise and the concept. because the rooting down, the dropping of our center of gravity is one of the primary physical principles that we're looking to cultivate always in Tai Chi. In simplistic terms, the lower your center of gravity, the more stable you are. But we also realize that the actual act of rooting produces the upward movement. Try not to hold your hands and your fingers stiff. And in particular, as you sink down, that's a good time to try and identify a release in those areas that feel a bit tight or a bit stiff. Shoulders, back, maybe, hips. More aware of that inner strength, that inner structure supporting us, and also helping us to move. This time, keep the same movement going in your legs and your hips, but turn your hands outwards. And this is the exercise, the wild goose. As I said earlier, we use a great deal of imagery in Tai Chi. And so when an image resonates for you, like the image of the bird in flight, it may convey a quality for you, a kind of aspect of the movement. If the image doesn't work for you, then don't worry, because we use different images at different times. And the important thing is really the feel of the exercise, our awareness of the movements, both the external movement, the choreography of the movement, but increasingly a sense of the internal movement, the flow of the energy. And then again, same thing, legs and hips, but this time your hands dropping down, crossing in front of your belly, coming up as though you're painting a circle with your fingertips. This is parting the cloud. So for some of you, these will be very familiar movements. And that gives you the opportunity to feel more of what's going on within the body. People who are newer to this are still trying to work out the movements. Just go nice and easy and gently. Don't rush the process of becoming familiar with the movements. So a certain amount of patience is called for. One more time. This time, letting your hands drop down to your sides. So they'll just hang on a line from your shoulders, your ankles. And as you push up on one side, the elbow being pushed out, drawing your fingers up. Then as your elbow drops down, your hand ends up slightly above your head and pull down. Yeah. And come all the way down to the full length of your arm, change sides, and then on the other side. And at the top of the movement, just rolling your fingers around like you're plucking something off a tree. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars in the Sky. So an alternating expansion and contraction from one side to another. Don't let your hand go too high. Try and avoid stretching out. So we go to 80% of the full movement. And you're trying to maintain space within the body. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Do one more of these on each side. Take your time. Notice whether you're speeding up automatically. It's very common for that to happen. Just have an intention not to go too quickly, not to speed up for once, much as possible, keeping a nice steady pace. We do that by paying attention to the details of the movement. Bring your hands to your sides and then inward slightly and again up, this time a little bit above your head, so you're pressing your hands into a low ceiling. Down, taking the time to return to the starting. And then do that again, but let your elbows drop so you push out sideways. And keeping your hands slightly in front of your body, so keeping that slightly longer, broader feeling in your back. And just aware of the sensations of movement and change, particularly in your back, but maybe elsewhere in your body. Try not to rush the inward movement, the contracting movement. This time, as you push your hands out sideways, once again, with the focus of your attention in that middle part of your body, a turn in one direction changes the direction of your arms, coming back, and then in the other direction and back, and then finishing the set off by facing forwards and pushing out, pushing in four directions. Easy and gentle. Last time. And then let your hands drop down. And this time, the expansion pushes one arm out, palm of your hand facing outwards slightly, swinging around, almost level with the top of your head and in line with your nose and down. Similar feeling to dragon plucked star from the sky, but with the addition of a rotation in your shoulder. And if it's comfortable from this position at the top, add a little turning. If you're finding that's tightening up in your back or your shoulders and hips, then just stay facing the front. And then changing size. Noticing any difference between one side of your body and another. And as a general thing, just trying to maintain and cultivate this internal awareness of movement, patterns of expansion and contraction within your body. Again, people with a bit more background in these arts should have some kind of expectation of what they would be, I expect. This time, if it's comfortable, add in the turn. But bear in mind that quite often we discover new things about these exercises over a period of time. One more time. Give your legs a shake. A little bit earlier, I described how when my weight is forward, again, I'm exaggerating here, when I let my hips drop back, pelvis leveled off, and my body came more to the upright position. It's very exaggerated. And so we discovered that the angle, the alignment of our pelvis has a profound effect on the alignment of our upper body. And one of the things that we're trying to do is maintain that alignment with the gravity, so we're not straining against it. The next two exercises change that slightly to begin with. Be very careful with these two exercises. They can be quite strong on knees and back. start off by just sinking down and pushing up as we did before, with this intention to keep your pelvis level. But this time, as you go back, tilt your pelvis so your hips go back. And of course, your shoulders will go forward. At the bottom of the movement here, let your hips drop down again. Notice how it brings your head up and then push up. The 3 stages now. 1, going down, tilting forward. 2, letting your hips drop back, coming back to the upright position. 3, pushing up. It doesn't have to be a big movement. 1, 2, and 3. I'm showing it quite big, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. But it's again, it's the significance, the center part of the body. This time, as you push up, arms following. So as you sink down and your hips go back, your arms follow the movement. This is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. And you see once again how that middle part of the body has a profound effect on the rest of the body. In this instance, by changing the angle of the upper body. So to come to the upright position, we develop the habit of allowing our hips to drop back rather than straining in our back, our shoulders, and our neck. And we start to get a very open feeling in the upper part of the body, as though our head is floating up. Just rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Do this one more time. And then hands in front of your hips. Turn to your left first of all, and then push your hips back. Swing them across the other side, drawing your arms across and back. This is polishing the table. Once again, it's the action in your hips and your pelvis that move your upper body for you, including your arms. Don't overextend your arms. Very, very careful with your back. It's not always the case in Tai Chi that the bigger movements are the most valued. One more time in each direction. And then your hands drop down, and once again, just swinging your arms around. Once again, feeling the significance of this center part of your body. When we move there, we affect all parts of the body. So we learn to let our upper body, in particular our arms and our hands, follow what's happening in the center, hips, pelvis, legs, and feet. And shake out. So we gradually form, excuse me, excuse me. We gradually form a view of the body that is less fixed on the upper body, on our arms and our hands, but it's more concerned with the whole of the body. When one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion, we're told. And so we start to get that sense of the flow, the movement, the energy through the body as a cohesive whole movement. And in order to do that, we have to change our perspective on the body a little bit. If it's just the hands, it tends to remain just the hands and the upper part of the body. When we learn to move from our center, when we learn to move from our legs and from our feet, we're generating whole body movement. And that is conducive to the flow of energy, but it is also very conducive to our well-being in general. Because I think when we start to get that sense of a whole body movement, we feel less fragmented, more connected in both mind and body, and that makes a significant contribution to our well-being. So we're going to change the stance. We're going to keep the width of the step, and this time turn one foot out, and this is an angle that you can play about with. We did this stance earlier, but a bit more detail now. The step straight forward with the other foot. You can still see the space between my legs here. And the length of the step, to begin with, is fairly short. It's about the same length as the width, maybe a little bit longer. And being a bit more precise now, a bit more careful. Once again, transferring your weight. So we let our weight drop into the front foot and then drop into the back. It's a process we refer to as filling and then I'm going to come a bit closer. So make sure, for instance, when I go forward, you see where my knees above the ball of my foot, I don't want to be out here. Likewise, when I go back, I don't want the leg to be twisted up or anything. So initially, we're looking at something like 60%, 60% of our weight going into the front foot, maybe up to 70 going into the back foot. And significantly, to begin with, just think of the upper part of your body as sitting into your hips. You're resting on your hips. And so the upper body is being moved by the transfer of your weight. That makes this a really key exercise in the Tai Chi system. It's also very, very important for our general mobility. We're learning to move with that sense of the root and the stability that comes from it. And once again, that emphasizes the significance of the sense of being pushed from your feet. It's like if I got a pile of books and put them on the floor and then decided I wanted to move them, if I push at the top of the pile, the whole pile would just collapse. If I pushed at the bottom, then it would have a better chance of just sliding along. And this is an important key principle. It requires a switch of attention. So as we tend to quieten our thoughts, as we tend to be able to direct our thoughts more effectively. So again, feet, legs, the transfer of the weight becomes a primary focus. And over a period of time, we tend to move more from the feet, from the ground beneath our feet than previously. That helps to keep us in line while we're moving. And so maintains our posture in movement, helps to keep us more stable. It is strong on the legs, so this is also a good exercise for conditioning our legs. So this is a key exercise to take away with you into practice. When you go into your back foot this time, rest there and gently raise the front toes and have the front foot slightly turned out. Go forwards, settle in the front foot, push your back knee forward so your heel comes up. So now, gradually, more and more of the weight of your body flows down through the supporting leg. Remember, But to keep the body upright, you want to keep a feeling of our hips dropping back. The previous two exercises, rowing the boat and polishing the table, help us to understand that. We don't want to lean forwards or backwards. So for instance, if as I go forwards and raise my back knee up, I lean forwards, I'm more likely to stumble. So we're learning to move in line with the pull of gravity. And Tai Chi always seeks to maintain that alignment with whatever forces are acting on its body. Principally, that's going to be the pull of gravity. And then from there, you just bring the foot in, push back and out, put the ball of the foot down, lower your heel, and move the weight back. Bring the front foot in. When you step out, put the heel down. So when we're in line with the forces acting on our body, the pull of gravity in particular, when we can drop our center of gravity, then we can begin to feel more stable. I'm going to change the microphone. It's just flashed up that there may be a fault. Hopefully that's working. So try not to think in terms of balancing. When we balance, we have a tendency to fall in one direction that gets neutralized by the opposite tendency. Here, we're dropping straight down. We're trying to retain stability. Shake out. So we reframe this idea of having to maintain a sense of balance. Balance has a different context in Tai Chi, I think you'll find. But again, if we're in line with the pull of gravity, if we can feel the pull of gravity through our body, and this is where awareness, being in touch with what's going on with your body is so very important, then we're more likely to be able to drop our center of gravity. We're less likely to lose stability. I would say it's only when we lose stability that balance becomes an issue. And if we do lose stability, actually, one of the key things is to try and get that stability back. So from the parallel position, try that on the other side. Turn the right foot out, step forward with the left foot. Build it up slowly. Notice whether there's a tendency to lean. There often is, because a slight tilt forwards in particular is a standard part of everyday walking. There's nothing wrong with that, because it can help us build up a certain degree of momentum and endurance, I suppose you could say. But we're not trying to do that in this. It's a slow process. So, trying to keep my pelvis level, my shoulders in line with my hips as I move. Not an easy thing to do. So an exercise very worthwhile to practice. And then beginning to raise your toes and your heel. So we gradually increase the amount of weight flowing down into each leg. Ideally getting to a point where almost all the weight of the body is able to be supported in that way. And then again, stepping in. Then we're just going to take some steps forwards and backwards. So go whichever direction suits you best. Trying to maintain the width of the steps. So imagine parallel lines moving through your feet like tram lines. Just walking down those lines. And try not to fall into the step. Plant the foot down before you transfer your weight. As though you're walking on thin ice and you want to just test the ice before you commit your weight. And try in the other direction. It's not a race, and it's an opportunity really just to give yourself time to reflect on certain aspects of walking that we often miss. And then bring your feet parallel. That exercise is also an excellent way of focusing your attention. Sometimes it's very difficult to sort of gather your attention in. But doing something physical, something very simple, can be a good way to just gradually get that sense of the gathered attention, and from that sense of stillness, the sense of calmness that is so characteristic. Now, we're going to bring the arms back into the movement, and this is always problematic in Tai Chi. We do tend to overemphasize the arms in our as a species. It's a natural thing to do. So we're constantly looking to connect. So have your right foot forwards, arms down at your sides, starting with your weight in your back foot. Imagine you're in water. Well, imagine somebody gently takes hold of your arms. So as you move your weight forward, your hands get left behind. But as you arrive in the front leg, they're released and they swing through. Imagine the same thing from the front. So there's a very slight delay between your hips and your shoulders moving and your arms following. This is a movement called fisherman castanet. Lovely wave-like quality of movement flowing through your body, moving your arms here. Try not to stiffen up, do too much in your shoulders. And again, people familiar with this exercise, try and focus a bit more on the patterns of movement, of expansion and contraction within your body. So what we're doing at the moment is moving forwards and backwards. The center of our body is facing forwards, and our arms are following that movement. We're going to change that. So the next time you come back, turn towards the direction your back foot is facing, and then towards the front. So drawing your arms across your body. Notice the gentle curve in the fingers there. And building on that curve, let your arms, as you come back, swing up to just below shoulder height. Go forwards, turn, and draw your hands across your front hip. Turn a little bit, and then back. So making this sideways figure of 8 movement, or if you prefer, some people think of it as the infinity sign, largely by virtue of the fact that you're now turning in the center of your body. Arms following the movement of your shoulders, shoulders following the movement of your hips, plus this rhythm of expansion and contraction. One more time. Good, and shake out. But try those on the other side. So parallel stance, turn your right foot out, have your left foot forwards. Start with your weight back and fisherman cast. Very straightforward, very lovely exercise, which again gives us the opportunity for a bit of inner reflection, shall we say. I think too complicated going on here at the moment. It's led by your weight. Fisherman cast the net. And then bring the turn into the movement. Arms following your shoulders. Shoulders following the turn in the center of your body. And then into the figure of 8 movement. Then overextend your arms. Nice and easy and gently. And you should feel that you could have moved a little bit further. Just feeling that the muscles of your shoulders and your arms are quite soft. They're working, but they're not straining. So again, this sense of the inner movement beginning to build. This time when you come back, raise the front toes, bring the foot parallel. You can have the feet slightly turned out, let the hands come across and go into your left leg. Bring the right foot in, step sideways and come across. So now combining the figure of 8 movement with the sideways transfer of your body. Notice how my body turns a bit. It's exaggerated a little bit. It's generally more subtle than that. And then from this position, again, either going forwards or backwards. I'm going to go forwards, otherwise I'll bump into the wall behind me, stepping through, and the hands coming down towards my front hip. So combining the stepping with the figure of 8 movement. Remember, stable and rooted. Maybe just raising your knee. If you
feel that you wobble all over the place doing that, then just leave the toes down. That's fine. Nice and gently. And this time I'm going to change direction. So this is an adaptable exercise. We started going sideways, but now we're going forwards and backwards. We change direction if we wanted to. So it's an exercise you can do in any space, really, this one. Once you get used to the basic pattern, this time, just bring in the big parallel once again. And stand. Shake out. Excellent. So now, just rubbing your hands together. And then with the pads of your fingers, tapping over your face. And over the top of your head. Down for one shoulder, your arm, the other side. Your back. Around your hips and your legs. Light on your belly and the upper part of your chest. It's important for us all to remember, but especially newer people, that all of these principles are part of the ongoing cultivation in Tai Chi. They're aspirational. Nobody ever keeps them the whole time. But this last exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. So when we lose the root, when we lose our alignment, when we lose that sense of calmness and stillness, Tai Chi offers us a way back, a way of finding it again. So from the parallel position, let your hips sink down, pushing up, arms coming out, then wrapping around as though they're going to hold a ball against your chest, drawing in, and then once again settling back down. And just see what it is that brings you back, whether it's the name of the movement, Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain, the image of the mountain, feeling the gravity in your body. Could be lots of different things for each of us. But just see if there's one or two things that might be useful to you during your day. There's times when you really need that little bit of extra peace and quiet, a little bit of extra space, perhaps, where you just need to let your body settle a little bit. What would be most useful to you at that point? It was the last one. And stand. Shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Do please get in touch if you have any questions. Other than that, hopefully see you again soon. Bye-bye.